Hello everybody and welcome back to another edition of Slam Talk Sports. It is a beautiful Friday afternoon here in Melbourne, Australia, and where would you rather be but listening to my dulcet tones talking about all things sport and particularly all things football coming up this weekend. It is a huge round 15. Got a few teams on the bye, but plenty of good action to unpack over the coming days. But firstly and always, I must talk about Thursday night football. Yes, it was my Bombers playing on Thursday night football, as they so often do. How does that work? How are we on 5-day breaks going to Perth? We're on 5-6-day breaks going to Brisbane. We're constantly on Thursday night footy against your North Melbournes and your GWS Giants. And we're losing. We're losing because we've got short breaks and we're pretty much a very shithouse team at the moment. But anyway, that's beside the point. Essendon go down, but was it about 41 points in the end to Fremantle over at Optus Stadium. It was a very, I wouldn't say rugged, I would say roughed up. Yeah, it looked like they hadn't slept for a couple of days, Optus Stadium. They had the big State of Origin game there the night before, and there was just patches of grass that didn't quite look right all over the field. It wasn't probably the safest playing surface, but we did able to get through 4 quarters of this one, and it was, of course, the big dogger. The man I said, it's just time. You got to get him in Supercoach Luke Jackson, who was about $630,000 going into last night's game with a break-even of 147. He utterly dominated the Essendon Football Club with 3 goals and about 21 disposals. It was a masterclass from LJ. But besides that, Essendon held himself in pretty decent account, missing obviously a whole host of senior players in Ridley, Redmond, Reid, Langford. These players are not world enders, they're not superstars, but for Essendon, they are very, very important, crucial players. But they're still able to put up a contest, put up a fight to make sure Thursday night footy wasn't an automatic turn off at halftime. And to give Freo credit, the likes of Brayshaw, Sarong, Clark, even, Paddy Voss, he was pretty good. He was all right last night, kicked 1 goal, let's not get ahead of ourselves. And also the big kahuna, Josh Tracy. They're able to muster a result. And one player I want to mention who had a slow start to the year that also dominating right now for Fremantle is Luke Ryan. You look at his ranking points over the last 5 weeks. He'll be averaging around 105, 110. But last night, it was classic All-Australian Luke Ryan sitting back there, couple of kicks behind play, just marking everything pretty much on his chest, as Essendon didn't set up to account for one of the best intercept markers in the game in Luke Ryan. It was an authoritative victory from Fremantle, but not one they'll remember in about 4, 6, 7 weeks' time. They're looking to push forward to the top 4 to get a home final, potentially come 5th or 6th, and Essendon are looking to stay somewhere around the mark of the top 8, but realistically are going to fold back into the bottom 6 and be thinking about draft picks in about a month's time. Well, that's it for a quick recap from Thursday night football. It was an entertaining game at times, but of course we're looking forward to a big week of footy action. Before I get into the preview for round 15, before I talk about Friday, Saturday and Sunday football, just quickly I wanted to mention Jeremy McGovern. Jeremy McGovern has announced his retirement about half an hour ago. He is one of the all-time great defenders I've ever seen play Australian rules football. He potentially is the best intercept marker of all time, and we will always remember his iconic plays in the 2018 Grand Final. What was it? A mark to McGovern. Then it was a long kick down the line to Nathan Vardy. Then it was Liam Ryan streaming past before delivering it via illegal shepherd by Willie Rioli to the hands of Dom Sheed before that iconic goal was kicked. Jeremy McGovern will always have a place in Australian football history. Just from my time watching him, he was such a dominant force, even at both ends of the ground. He had the ability to go forward and kick clutch goals. There was a day against Port Adelaide, I think at the Adelaide Oval, where he swung forward and kicked a monstrous goal from about 45, 50 out. He was a truly tremendous player, probably the best set of hands I've seen play footy over the last 20 years, and he will be remembered for a long, long time. A West Coast legend. We salute you, Jeremy McGovern. Enjoy retirement. You were one of the all-time greats. Now let's look forward to Friday night football down at the Cattery. It is Geelong taking on Brisbane. Now the Brisbane Lions, they've been spluttering a little bit of recent times. They lost at Adelaide Oval to Adelaide, and they lost last week at home to the GWS Giants. Can they get back on track against the Geelong side, which has already lost 1 game at home this year and only averages about 1.5 losses per year down at the Cattery? Now the line is 17.5 points Geelong's way. Let's look at the ins and the outs. not many too big ins or outs for tonight's game. You've got Ollie Henry coming in for Geelong and Sam de Koning missing for the next 5 to 6 weeks. A little of injury. Was it a back or a shoulder injury? He'll miss the next 5 to 6 games. And for the Brisbane Lions, we've got Darcy Gardner coming in after a little stint in the VFL, and Will McLaughlin coming in. No relation to Gillen, I don't think so. Did you see his top hat at Royal Ascot? It's bigger than mine. And out comes Jack Payne with a patella tendon injury. Unfortunately, he will be lost for the season, the premiership defender for the Brisbane Lions. And out goes Callum Archie, who is missing with an illness. This is such a big game. Such a big game. And if you've followed, what's been happening in recent history between these two sides, Brisbane Lions have not won at the Cattery since 2003. That is an incredibly long time ago. Back in 2003, Essendon were playing and winning in finals. It was a different world. The Facebook had not even been invented yet. It was 22 years ago. That's how long it's been since the Brisbane Lions went down to the Cattery and took the 4 points. Do you have any confidence in them tonight? I've got very little, because I know what Geelong's going to bring to the table. They're going to bring the Dash brothers. It's going to be Bailey Smith and Max Holmes doing pretty much whatever they want, because Brisbane never employ any sort of tag or hard run with role. Now, Jared Berry might go to, I don't know, who's going to play inside mid? Like Tom Atkins? They're not going to tag Tom Atkins. He doesn't have the motor to go with a Max Holmes or to go with a Bailey Smith. So I'm unsure how they're going to combat that. But on the other side of things, the Cats are the only team pretty much that uses 2 taggers this year. They use 2 run with players. So Oshin Mullen will most likely go to Lachie Neale and have a hard tag on him. And Mark O'Connor might go to Hugh McCluggage or Will Ashcroft. So really, you're going to have to wait until maybe an hour before the game if you want to put any bets on, just so you know the intel that's coming through on who will get attention and who won't. From a betting side of things, I'm probably going to back Geelong this one. By 17 points, I don't know. It's a bit too tight to call. Disposals-wise, Tom Stewart's about $1.30 for 20. So is Max Holmes is about $1.35 for 25. I don't see any tags going to them. I don't see any attention going to them. If Geelong can control the game on their terms down in Geelong, then those two should surely hit. Besides that, I don't have too much interest in a betting perspective. Just want to watch this one because it should be a really nice contest. And this rivalry has been bubbling over the years. Okay, we remember, of course, in 2020 when Geelong beat them in the preliminary final at the Gabba during the COVID year when Brisbane had a great chance to win the flag. It was Paddy Dangerfield. It was Joel Selwood. It was Gary Ablett Jr. kicking a couple of goals, including an iconic one from 50 to pretty much shut the gate in that prelim final. Also, we go all the way back to 2004. Yes, Geelong hosted Brisbane at the MCG in an iconic prelim final. Iconic for all the wrong reasons, because that game should have been played at the Gabba. Yes, Lee Matthews is still crying about it, because that was back in the day when the MCG had to host a prelim final. So instead of Brisbane, who came second on the ladder, hosting that game at the Gabba, they had to travel from Brisbane to Melbourne to play a home prelim against Geelong. Beat Geelong, travel back to Brisbane, and then travel back to the MCG and Melbourne to play the grand final against Port Adelaide. An ultimate disgrace, over 7.5 hours of travelling, and a prelim final away from their home ground. One of the all-time jokes. The AFL never let that happen again. But as part of the reason why this rivalry has been bubbling over the surfaces for the last 20 years. And of course, only a couple of years ago, Brisbane got dismantled by the Geelong on the MCG in 2022 as the Cats went on their way to winning the grand final. And last year, Brisbane took down Geelong in the prelim final to ensure the Cats didn't win another flag and give Brisbane their long-awaited flag during this era of this brilliant side, which has been up and down for the last 10 to 15 years, but been really pushing for a flag for the last 8. This is a great rivalry in the sport. I cannot wait for tonight's game. It is, of course, Patrick Dangerfield's 350th game tonight. An all-time great, in my opinion, an 8-time All-Australian, which is the equal most in history, as well as a Brownlow medal winner back in 2016, and most importantly, a premiership player and the Gary Ayres medal winner for the best player of the finals back in 2022. I don't think there's been too many players in history who have the mixture of his size, his strength, and his speed. A 3-time AFL Grand Final sprint winner, as well as one of the best finals players over the last few years. I've loved watching Paddy Dangerfield play at the highest level. Truly a beast of a human. Congratulations on the longevity you've had, Paddy. 350 games tonight. I hope you go well. You've been a joy to watch over the last 15 seasons. But let's move forward to Saturday afternoon football, and it will be at the MCG. We've got Carlton taking on North Melbourne. These are the ins and the outs. In comes Mark Pitane, out goes Hudson O'Keefe. And for North Melbourne, in comes Charlie Comben, and out goes Callan Dawson. Now, it's good to see Common back in the fold. We thought he might miss the next 5 to 6 weeks. Instead, it's only been a couple. Out goes Callan Dawson, who's probably more fit to play VFL at the moment. He probably needs a little bit more time to figure out how to compete at the highest level. And Common has been a really great find for the North Melbourne Football Club since he's been moved to a defensive role. What was it, a top 30 pick a couple of years ago? He just needed a little bit of time to acclimatise to the highest level. And on, of course, Carlton side of things, Pitnet comes in, give a little bit of chop out to Tom De Koning, who could play a little bit more forward in this contest, with Harry Mackay sidelined for the next month, and Charlie Curnow. It's a game time call, but they're very, very confident he will play. Now, the line, if I can get the line, sorry, a little bit of indigestion there. I only had a half a slice of bread for lunch, so it can't be that. Now, the line tonight is, if I can get it up, the line is, it is 24.5 points. The line is 24.5 points for Carlton to win by. I'm not confident in that if I'm a Carlton supporter. I mean, you only play one quarter of football. I know you smashed North Melbourne, what was it, on Good Friday, which seems like ages ago. Wait, it's Easter? I thought it was Tuesday, okay? But said all that, I still think Carlton will win, but will it be by 4 goals? I'm not so certain. Carlton, they beat the bad teams, but are North Melbourne a really bad team? Well, not in recent form, actually. They went over to Perth. They just lost to Fremantle. Obviously, they beat West Coast, who are not a very good team. They've been around the mark for at least the last month. It shows their average margin of their losses is around 3 goals over the last 6 to 7 weeks. Outside the outlier that was Good Friday against this very team, Carlton, they've been very competitive for the last 2 months. From a betting side of things, there's a lot of players I don't mind for their disposals in this game. It should be a relatively sunny and dry weekend across Australia. I'm looking at the weather report now. Now, I can't see how we're going to get into any trouble in terms of the weather. Should be sunny across all states and all games. So I don't mind goals, but I always stick away from them and stick with the disposals. I'm going to look at 25 touches for George Hewitt. It's about $1.25. He's gotten it just about every single week. An contested bull is George Hewitt. I think he'll go very close to hitting that. Also, don't mind Colby McKershaw. Now, Colby McKershaw has been moved to a halfback role, as you would know from my iconic TikToks. But seriously, 25 touches should be pretty easy for him. He had 27 last week in a wet game that they lost, but he had 35 against West Coast only 2 weeks ago in a game that they won. They want the ball in his hands. He is a top 3 draft pick. He's a very talented man. I think Kirsch should have 25. And for a bit lower odds, you can get Cripps. Yes, that is Patrick Cripps for 20 touches at about $1.15. He's hit it 4 of his last 5. He had a very low possession game against Essendon on King's birthday eve when he was tagged by Will Setterfield. But 20 plus touches, that should be his go, surely, in a game where the matchups do present well for him. And I don't mind Caleb Daniel for 20. Now, he's playing the back line still, getting a lot of kick-ins. 20 touches should be pretty simple for Caleb Daniel. Not good odds, but it could be a good banker for your multi. Let's move forward to the next game on Saturday, and it is 4:15 at the Adelaide Oval. It is Port Adelaide taking on the Sydney Swans. In comes Lockie Jones, in comes Christian Moraes, and in comes Joe Berry for Port Adelaide. Out goes Alir, who he has a little injury. Alir, one of the best key defenders in the comp. Out goes Ollie Wines, and out goes Hugh Jackson, who's been omitted after 3 games. In for the Sydney Swans comes Matty Roberts. In comes Tom Papley. In comes Joel Amati. And in comes, Errol. I would do anything just to get him in my super coach team, but I can't because he's missed the last 3 months with a fractured ankle. So good to have Errol Goulden back in the AFL. He's one of the best kicks in the league. He might be the best kick in the AFL, and it completely changes the way Sydney play their game. They are a ball movement team through kicking. They love to kick the footy. They haven't had Errol Goulden's sublime kicking skills at their disposal this season. To have him back on Saturday will be a must-watch. Out goes Jake Lloyd, the 2-time best and fairest winner, has finally been omitted after being in the side for like 10, 15 years. An absolute darling of the Supercoach side, of our Supercoach sides. When I say finally, like, it's a shock because this man has been so consistent for so long. Jakey Lloyd has been a Supercoach god, pretty much a Supercoach god, not quite a demigod or one of the all-time greats like a Max Gawn or a Gary Ablett Jr. But Jake Lloyd was a staple of our Supercoach defences for a long, long time. He goes out. So does Taylor Adams with a little injury. So does Tom Hanley, and so does Corey Warner. Who do you like in this one, everybody? This is a really tough one to pick. Similar to Port Adelaide playing against Sydney last week, there's no real clear, obvious answer. Now, the line is only 6.5 points. It is in Adelaide, so that's probably why Port Adelaide do have a little bit of a favouritism in this one. But looking at the sides, it is very evenly matched. This is obviously a rematch from last year's preliminary final at the SCG, except we're back at the Adelaide Oval. In fact, Port Adelaide already played Sydney earlier this year, beating them about 10 points at the SCG, and it was only an Aaron Francis masterclass in the fourth quarter that brought the game back for the Sydney Swans. I'm personally going to tip, probably going to tip Port, just because it is in Adelaide, and Sydney are right on the precipice of having their year ended. They started so slowly. Was it 0-5 or around like 1-4 to start their year? Port Adelaide is starting to build a little bit. I don't think either team plays finals right now, but just because it's at the Adelaide Oval, Horn Francis has played last week, played really well. Now he's got another game under his belt. I just think they'll just get the job done, but neither result would surprise me. City are looking pretty close to full strength now with Amadi, Papley, and Goulden all coming back in, and Matthew Roberts overcoming his illness. It's a tough one. It actually won't be Labradoodle walking hour. This will be a good watching game. I've got Port just getting it done. Betting-wise, Rosie 25, Butters 25. I mean, unless there's a hard tag from James Jordan, which we'd find out before the game, then I don't see a way that either of these players won't hit their marks. Butters beat the Toby Bedford tag a couple of weeks ago. So did Connor Rosie. These guys are just so good, and their whole offense flows through their feet. They want the ball in their hands so they can kick the ball and use it around the ground. So unless there's something that comes out pre-game, I'm not sure why neither of these players would hit 25 touches. From the Swans, I don't mind Heaney 20, Warner 20, and Roberts 20. Now, Callum Mills comes back into the fold now with all these players healthy. So it's hard to know exactly how the touches will be divided. But based on what we've seen over the last 2 seasons, these players have hit this mark pretty much every week. Chad Warner might play a little bit more half forward. He can impact from that way. If you don't want to put him in, that's okay. He has hit it, though, in his last 5 games. Isaac Heaney, he's still playing pretty much as a midfielder. I know Goulden comes in, which changes the mix slightly, but I could see Goulden being out more on a wing or potentially being subbed, or I don't think he will be sub, but he could be subbed. So I think we're okay with Isaac Heaney. And Matt Roberts, well, his role is probably the most dicey because Mills might fall back and be a distributor off the back line, and Roberts goes up into a wing. But based on what we've seen this season, Roberts has traditionally been the first receive player from the kick-ins, which Blakey has taken a lot of. So unless that changes dramatically and he moves up to the wing with Jake Lloyd removed from the side, then I still think he's okay for 20-plus touches. Let's move forward to Saturday night football. It is under the lid at Marvel Stadium. We've got St. Kilda taking on the Collingwood Football Club. It is a Collingwood home game, remarkably, at Marvel Stadium, which Pies fans are not too happy about, but hey, they like to complain a lot, don't they? The line. If you can guess the line, you'll be a very intelligent man. The line is 30.5 points Collingwood's way. Let's look at the ins and the outs. In for Collingwood is the Premiership star Patrick Lipinski, who was the sub in the 2023 Grand Final. Out goes William Hayes. And for St. Kilda, in comes Alexander Taru. Yes, the top 10 pick from last year's draft finally debuts the intercept marker and the high flyer from Moorabbin. In comes Mateus Philippou to match up next to Alex Taru. Philippou overcomes, was it a plantar fascia? Something along those lines. Had a really painful injury. Only a 2-weeker, though. He's back in the team. And if I'm a Saints fan, I'm loving these ins. Philippou, Taru, and Darcy Wilson. This is the future of the St. Kilda Football Club. These 3 players, Taru, Philippou, and Wilson, should all be 10-year players. Darcy Wilson started his career very strongly. Philippou, who was about pick 10 in that draft, potentially could go higher now. He's shown a lot of raw talent. And Taru, the Saints fans will be hoping, is going to be a 200 gamer who can play off the back line and maybe eventually move into the midfield. Having said all that, I don't give the Saints any chance of winning this. No, they've gone with the youth movement. They've gone with the youth group, okay? They're not going to potentially put all their eggs in the Steele and McRae basket for the next couple of seasons. They want to have a couple of different moving pieces. Now, we know Ross Lyon is fiercely loyal to his older players. He brought in McRae and Steele. Well, sorry, he brought in Steele a while ago. He didn't bring him in. St. Kilda did. Apologies. But he brought in Jack McRae this offseason to fill a need, to fill a midfield role. Having said all that, I could say in the last month of the season, we see more Philippou on ball. Potentially, we see more Hugh Boxall coming in, Hugo Garcia coming in, and different roles slightly tinkered to set them up for the future. These three names should give a lot of confidence for St. Kilda and what they're trying to build in this era. Betting wise, it's a tough one because we know that there's a tag coming. Windhager, yes, Marcus Windhager, that pesky man. He's going to go straight to Nick Dacos, similar how he went straight to Marcus Bontempelli last week. Do we think he's going to curtail his influence? Well, Nick Dacos was tagged to 20 touches by Ed Langdon, a great runner. It seems that Nick Dacos will be tagged every single week, and if it's not him, it's going to be Josh Dacos. That was what was flagged in the media. Big shout out to Mr. GOAT Fantasy, Drew Jones, who's doing tremendous work for the fantasy community and the betting community, letting us know the different matchups this week and what players are most likely to be elevated from the VFL. But in terms of betting, I'm probably going to stay away from Nick and Josh until we get some more clarity on who exactly will be tagged. And also because the odds are not great right now, about $1.20 and $1.30 a piece. I'm going to look more at two guns who seem to always deliver for me from St. Kilda. Yes, you know exactly who I'm talking about. It is Nazaya Wanganeen Miller. Every single week, this man has the ball in his hands and he gets involved in big disposal chains. 25 touches for Nazaya Wanganeen Miller. It's about $1.40. He does it every single week. Also like the moustached, mulleted, hat-making man that is Jack Sinclair. 25 plus touches at $1.45. He does it just about every single week. Now, I know what you're saying, Darcy. You picked two Saints players when you think the Pies will win by 35. Well, if the Pies are inaccurate, these two players take kick-ins. And also, the Saints just love to get the ball into their hands. They give them so much drive and run off the half-back line that I can't see a way they don't have around 20-plus touches, and they realistically should get 25 with ease. From the Collingwood side of things, we're staying away from the Dacoses. As I said, I don't mind Sidebottom and Pendlebury to have 20 touches. Now, the odds have gone down over the last couple of weeks on these two gentlemen who have been absolute stalwarts for the Magpies, but still, 20 touches seems very easy for these two men. Not going to get any sort of attention from Windhager in this one, and they still play a predominantly centre bounce role. Pendles does at least. Sidebottom started really strongly in the centre bounces to start the year. He still gets them, probably not quite as much as he used to with Ned Long being such a great player he has been for Pies this season, but I do like both of them to have 20 plus touches, and I like Collingwood to win the game. Let's move forward to Sunday football. And as always, we don't have full sides yet for the Sunday, but we do have extended benches. For the West Giants, taking on the Gold Coast Suns at NG Stadium, if I'm correct. There finally is a game at NG Stadium. I've been declaring games at NG when they haven't been there for at least a month. Manuka, NG. I'm from Melbourne. I think everything is Canberra at this point in my life. Anyway, the line is 1.5 points for the West Giants. It is pretty much a pick'em for these two sides. Now, ins and outs, Toby Green comes into the extended squad for the GWS Giants after suffering a nasty cork at the hands of Aliir only 2 weeks ago up in cold and chilly Canberra. And Jake Stringer returns to the GWS extended bench along with Ryan Angwin, Jacob Ware and James Leake. But there are two big outs for the GWS Giants. Out goes Sam Taylor, who will miss the next 4 to 6 weeks with a toe injury. And out goes Brent Daniels, the wee man, who's been so injury-plagued this season. Such a tremendous player over the last 18 months, but he will miss a little bit of time once again. And for the Gold Coast Suns, in comes Lockie Weller, Alex Davies, Ethan Reid, Connor Buderick and Jai Farrett to their extended bench. And Sean Lemons and David Swallow have both been omitted. Who do we like in this one? A pick'em. It's rare we see a 1.5 point line for two teams both in the top 8. This should be a really enticing contest between the two expansion franchises. I don't dislike the Suns just because Gold Coast have been pretty consistent even in their losses, while GWS tend to mix and match their form. They lost to Port Adelaide up in Canberra, a ground they allegedly play pretty well, and they lost to the Doggies there as well this year. But then they go to Brisbane and beat the Brisbane Lions. They go to Geelong and beat the Geelong Cats only a couple months ago. I can't figure out the Giants. I think Gold Coast are the safer bet due to their consistency. Having said that, I've got no great confidence in placing a tip on this one. Betting-wise, or I don't mind the Lockies. Yeah, the Lockies have been a bit of a lock this season. Lockie Ash, Lockie Whitfield. Lockie Whitfield returned to the back line last week. I think he had about 12 kick-ins. Lockie Ash has been dominating kick-ins all year. Now, people say, Lockie Ash, not a great kick. Lockie Ash had a really bad game 2 weeks ago against the Port Adelaide Football Club in Canberra, and so did Lachie Whitfield, making critical turnovers. Usually they're pretty sure-footed and they use the ball pretty well. I think both of them have 25 touches on the tab is decent odds. Goals-wise, I don't mind Ben Long anytime, along with Aaron Cadman anytime. Now, conditions should be fine up in Sydney on Sunday. They're both about $1.15, so I can get much odds on these two gentlemen, but they're good multi-bankers if you're looking for some anytime value, but personally, always stick to disposals. And finally, there is one more game for this round. It is Sunday at Marvel Stadium. We've got the Western Bulldogs taking on Richmond. These are the ins and outs for this one. Nick Caulfield comes into the extended squad for the Western Bulldogs, along with Jed Buslinger, James Harms, and then we've got Lockie Jacques. Is that in relation to Phil Jacques? This should have been great opener for the Australian cricket team, who was stuck behind two bums in Hayden and Langer. Out from the Western Bulldogs comes Luke Cleary. And for the Richmond Tigers, there is just the one change at this time. It is Kane McAuliffe, who's been a very good Supercoach pickup. He comes out. And Jacob Blight, James Trezise, McKelty Lafau, and Jasper Olga enter the extended squad. The line for this one, let's try and guess it. I'm guessing it is doggies by 37. That's my guess right now, having not looked at it. And it is doggies by 49. Oh, they expect a belting on Sunday footy. What do you think? Do you think Richmond can get gutsy and put up a fight? Judged by recent history, the doggies will absolutely flog them. Okay, they flogged the Saints last week. They flogged the Bombers every time they play them. In fact, they flog every team outside the top 9, really. There's a top 9 at the moment. Do you trust them to go out there and flog Richmond? They probably will, but it doesn't usually give me any confidence going forward in the Western Bulldogs. They have shown a complete inability to beat good teams. Betting-wise, in this one, well, I don't mind a couple of players, even though the odds are pretty nuked for this one because they expect a belting. Bont for 20. Now, I know Bont had his worst game in 5 years last week, but Richmond have not tagged all year. And if they have tagged, it has been someone like a Camden McIntosh doing a run with roll. If Camden McIntosh plays on Bont, there's just no way he doesn't have 20 disposals. And if you want to have a little bit of a different variation, Bont hasn't kicked a goal in 3 weeks. I like him for an anytime goal at $1.32. He kicked 3 against Richmond last year. He loves this matchup. No one of Richmond can really go with him. So I think Bont is in store for a big game. Otherwise, there's not too many real bets I like for this one. Looking at my run sheet here. Oh, Sam Banks. Take it to the banks. Okay, Jaden Short is still out with a calf injury. He's missed the last 6 weeks or so. I like Sam Banks for 20 disposals in a game the doggies really should boss, so the ball should be living on the half-back line of the Richmond Football Club. Sam Banks has taken kick-ins, $1.36 for 20 disposals. He had 21 against Sydney 2 weeks ago. Noah Bolter has slightly changed how many kick-ins he gets, but with Jaden Short out of the team, I think Banks for 20 disposals is not a bad bet. That's it. That is the show for Round 15 preview. I'll see you all next week to talk about the NBA Finals, Game 7. If you just watched that, what the hell? What the Halliburton just happened? Okay, OKC got thrashed in their first chance to win the NBA title in Game 6 in Indiana. I cannot wait for Game 7. We'll be about 10 a.m., 10:30 Monday morning. We'll be happy to chat to you all about it on Monday night. But until then, enjoy your weekend, enjoy the footy, enjoy the smorgasbord of sport that I prepared for you, and have a great time. This was Slam Talk Sports. Love you all. See you next week.